Just both.
You're up over here.
Every time we do that, she disappears.
We could move Riley to the end.
Well, we could just do it without doing it on YouTube. We could just do it live for the judges, like we could hear her before. They just wouldn't film it.
Riley, you're muted. Can you unmute?
Yeah.
All right, Riley, you can start whenever you're ready.
Okay. Author Aldous Huxley sets us in a utopic society in which there are a strict set of regulations governing the sex life of citizens and their placement in a caste-like system, based on the teachings of political theorist R. Ford. Because of this dictator-like government, it has caused some rebellion to break out. This is Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. Suddenly raising his voice, the director trumpeted. Ladies and gentlemen, excuse me for thus interrupting your efforts. A painful duty constrains me. The security and stability of society are in danger. Yes, in danger, ladies and gentlemen. This man, he pointed accusingly at Bernard, this man who stands before you here, this Alpha Plus, to whom so much has been given and from whom, in consequence, so much must be expected, this colleague of yours, or should I say ex-colleague, has grossly betrayed the trust imposed in him by his heretical views on sport and soma, by the scandalous unorthodoxy of his sex life, by his refusal to obey the teachings of R. Ford and behave out of office hours, even as a little infant. He has proved himself an enemy of society, a subverter, ladies and gentlemen, of all order and stability, a conspirator against civilization itself. For this reason, I propose to dismiss him with ignominy from his post he has held in this center. I propose forthwith to apply for his transference to a sub-center of the lowest order, and that his punishment may be in the best interest of society, as far as possible removed from any important center of population. In Iceland, he will have small opportunity to lead others astray by his unfordly example. The director paused. Then, folding his arms, he turned impressively to Bernard. Marx, can you show any reason why I should not now impose the judgment passed upon you? Yes, I can. Somewhat taken aback, but still majestically. Then show it. Certainly, but it's in the passage. One moment. Bernard hurried to the door and threw it open. Come in, he commanded, and the reason came in and showed itself. There was a gasp, a murmur of astonishment and horror. A young girl screamed, standing on a chair to get a better view. Someone upset 2 test tubes full of spermatozoa. Bloated, sagging, and among those firm, youthful bodies, those undistorted faces, a strange and terrifying monster of middle-agedness, Linda, advanced into the room, coquettishly smiling her broken and discolored smile, and rolling as she walked, with what was meant to be voluptuous undulation in her enormous haunches. Bernard walked beside her. There he is, he said, pointing at the director. Do you think I didn't recognize him? Linda asked indignantly, then turning to the director. Of course I knew you, Tomakin. I should have known you anywhere among 1,000. But perhaps you've forgotten me. Don't you remember, Tomakin? Your Linda? She stood smiling at him, her head tilted on one side, still smiling, but with a smile that became progressively in the face of the director's expression of petrified disgust. Less and less self-confident, that wavered and finally went out. Don't you remember, Tomakin? She repeated in a voice that trembled. Her eyes were anxious, agonized. The blotched and sagging face twisted grotesquely into the grimace of extreme grief. Tomakin! She held out her arms. Someone began to titter. What is the meaning of this monstrous? Tomakin! She ran forward, her blanket railing behind her, threw her arms round his neck, hid her face on his chest. A howl of laughter went up irrepressibly. This monstrous practical joke! Red in the face, he tried to disengage himself from her embrace, but desperately she clung. But I'm Linda! The laughter drowned her voice. You made me have a baby! She screamed above the uproar. There was a sudden and appalling hush. Eyes floated uncomfortably, not knowing where to look. The director went suddenly pale, stopped struggling, and stood, his hands on her wrists, staring down at her horrified. Yes, a baby, and I was its mother. She flung the obscenity like a challenge into the outraged silence, then suddenly breaking away from him, ashamed, covered her face with her hands, sobbing. It wasn't my fault, Tomakin, because I always did my drill, didn't I? Always. And I don't know how. If you knew how awful, Tomakin. But he was a comfort to me all the same. John! He came in at once, paused for a moment just inside the door, looked around, then soft on his moccasined feet strode quickly across the room, fell on his knees in front of the director, and said in a clear voice, My father! The comically smutty word relieved what had become quite an intolerable tension. Laughter broke out, enormous, almost hysterical, peal after peal, as though it would never stop. My father! And it was the director! That was really too good. The whooping and the roaring renewed themselves. Faces seemed on the point of disintegration. Tears were streaming. 6 more test tubes of spermatosa were upset. Pale, wide-eyed, the director glared about him in an agony of bewildered humiliation. The laughter, which had shown signs of dying away, broke out again, more loudly than ever. He put his hands over his ears and rushed out of the room.
Thank you, Riley. Thank you, Riley.
Instead, my home place had now actually not off the ground. I couldn't muster up. I couldn't muster up a single commonplace out of 1,000
I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm gonna stop us. We need to start again with Tracy from the top. Okay, we need to start again. And Tracy, take a breath. This is Tracy 1.
In the Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald, Daisy and Gatsby are lovers that were torn apart by the often tumultuous timing of life. They've been waiting for this moment their entire lives. The next scene, Gatsby has forced Nick into inviting Daisy to the most awkward tea party of all three of their lives. I paused, injured horribly, and as we through the halls I went to the room. Gatsby, his hands still in his pockets, and reclined against the mantelpiece in a strange counterfeit of perfect ease. Being boredom, his head leaning back so far that it rests against the face of his dysfunctional mantelpiece top. And from this position, his distraught eyes stared down at Daisy, who was sitting frightened but graceful on the edge of a stiff chair. We met before, muttered Gatsby. His eyes glanced momentarily at me and his lips parted in an abortive attempt at a laugh. Luckily, the clock took this moment to tilt dangerously the pressure of his head, whereupon he turned and caught it with trembling fingers and set it back in place. Then he sat down rigidly, his elbow on the arm of the sofa and his chin in his hand. I'm sorry about the clock, he said. My own face had now assumed a deep tropical burn. I couldn't muster up a single commonplace at 1,000 in my head. It's no clock, I told them idiotically. I think we all believed for a moment that it smashed in pieces on the floor. We haven't met in many years, said Daisy, her voice as matter of fact as it could ever be. 5 years as November. The automatic quality of Gatsby's answer says back at least another minute, had them both on the feet with a desperate suggestion that they help me make tea in the kitchen when the mnemonic Finn brought in on a tray. Among the welcome confusion of cups and cakes, a certain physical decency slavished itself. Gatsby got himself into a shadow, and while Daisy and I talked, looked conscientiously from one of us to the other, with tense, unhappy eyes. However, his calmness wasn't an end in itself. I made an excuse at the first possible moment and got to my feet. Where are you going? Demanded Gatsby in immediate alarm. I'll be back. I've got to speak to you about something before you go. He followed me wildly into the kitchen, closed the door, and whispered, "Oh, God," in a miserable way. What's the matter? This is a terrible mistake, he said, shaking his head. A terrible, terrible mistake. You're just embarrassed, that's all. I added, Daisy's embarrassed too. She's embarrassed just as much as you are. Don't talk so loud. You're acting like a little boy. Not only that, but you're rude. Daisy's sitting out there all alone. He raised his hand to stop my words. He looked at me with unforgettable reproach, opened the door cautiously, and went back into the other room. I walked up the back way, just as Gatsby had when he made his nervous circuit of the house half an hour before, and ran for the huge black dotted tree, whose massed leaves made a little fabric against the rain. But in the new silence, I felt that silence had fallen within the house too. I went in. I've been making every possible noise in the kitchen, short of pushing over the stove. I don't believe they heard a sound. They were sitting at either end of the couch, looking at each other as if some question had been asked. It was in the air, and every vestige of embarrassment was gone. Daisy's face was smeared with tears, and when I came in, she jumped up and began wiping at it with her handkerchief before a mirror. But there was a change in Gatsby that was simply confounding. He literally glowed without a word or gesture of exultation. New well-being radiated from him and filled the little room. "Oh, hello, old sport," he said, as if he hadn't seen me for years. I thought for a moment he was going to shake hands. "I want you and Daisy to come to my house. I'd like to show her around." "You sure you want me to come?" "Oh, absolutely, old sport." Daisy went upstairs to wash her face, while Gatsby and I waited on the lawn. "My house looks well, doesn't it?" he demanded. "See how the whole front of it catches the light?" I agreed that it is splendid. Yes, his eye went over it, every arched door and square tower. It took me just 3 years to earn the money that bought it. I thought you inherited your money. "I did, old sport, but I lost most of it in the war, the big panic, the panic of the war." I think he hardly knew what he was saying, for when I asked him what business he was in, he answered, "That's my affair," before he realized it wasn't the appropriate reply. "Oh, I went in several things. I was in the drug business, and then I was in the oil business, but I'm not in either one now." He looked at me with more attention. "Does that mean you've been thinking over what I proposed last night?" Before I could answer, Daisy came out the house, and 2 rows of brass buttons on her dress gleamed in the sunlight. "That huge place there? Do you like it?" "I love it, but I don't see how you live there all alone." "I've been full of interesting people, night and day, people who do interesting things, celebrated people." Instead of taking a shortcut along the sound, we went down the route and entered by the big postern. With enchanting murmurs, Daisy admired this aspect or that of the futile silhouette against the sky, Admired the gardens, the sparkling odor of jonquils, and the frothy odor of hawthorn and plum blossoms, the pale gold odor of kiss-me-nots at the gate. It was strange to reach the marble steps and find no stir of bright dresses in and out the door, and hear no sounds of bird voices in the trees. And inside, as we wandered through merry intimate music rooms and restoration salons, I felt that there were guests concealed behind every couch and table, under orders to be breathlessly silent until we had passed through. As Gatsby closed the door of the Martin College Library, I could have sworn I heard the owl-eyed man break into ghostly laughter. We went upstairs to period bathrooms swathed in rose and lavender, silk and vivid with new flowers, through dressing rooms and pool rooms and bathrooms with sunken baths. We treated to one chamber where a shut man in pajamas was doing liver exercises on the floor. It was Mr. Clipspender, the boarder. I had seen him wandering hungrily about the beach that morning. Finally, we came to Gatsby's own apartment, a bedroom and a bath and an Adams study, where we sat down and drank a glass of some chartreuse he pulled from a cupboard on the wall. He had once seized looking at Daisy, and I think he revalued everything in his house according to the measured response that your well-loved eyes. Sometimes, too, he stared around at his possessions in a dazed way, as if in her actual and astounding presence, none of it was any longer real. Once he nearly toppled down a flight of stairs. His bedroom was the simplest room of all, except where the dresser was garnished with a toilet set of pure dull gold. Daisy took the brush of delight and smoothed her hair, whereupon Gatsby sat down and shaded his eyes and began to laugh. It's the funniest thing, old sport. I can't when I try to. He passed visibly through 2 states and was entering upon a third. After his embarrassment and his unreasoning joy, he was consumed with wonder at her presence. He was so full of the idea, so long, doomed it right through to the end, waiting with his teeth set, so to speak, an inconceivable pitch of intensity. And now, in the reaction, he was running down like an overwhelmed clock. Recovering himself in a minute, he opened for us 2 hulking patent cabinets, which held his mass suits and dressing gowns and ties, and his shirts piled like bricks in stacks a dozen high. I've got a man in England who buys me clothes. He sent over a selection of things at the beginning of each season, spring and fall. He took out a pile of shirts and began throwing them one by one before us. Shirts of sheer linen and thick silk and fine flannel, which lost their folds as they fell and covered the table in a many-colored disarray. While we admired, he brought out more, and a soft, rich heap mounted higher. Shirts with stripes and scrolls and plaids and coral and apple green and lavender, with faint orange and monograms of Indian blue. Suddenly, with a strange sound, Daisy bent her head into the shirts and began to cry stormingly. "They're such beautiful shirts," she sobbed, her voice muffled in a thick fold. "It makes me sad because I've never seen such beautiful shirts before." I'm ready.
Ready?
dear me, I know he'll say something, and then what shall I do? Having decided that she wouldn't be vain enough to think people were going to propose when she had given them every reason to know what her answer would be, Jo set forth at the appointed time, hoping Teddy wouldn't go and make her hurt his poor little feelings. But when she saw a stalwart figure looming in the distance, she had a strong desire to turn about and run away. Louisa May Alcott touches on what it means to be a woman. In particular, a woman who is not equipped for the ordinary life in which she is presented. Set in the Civil War era, Jo March is an inspiring and outgoing writer who, despite the time difference, inspires young girls even today. Girls who resonate with Jo long for something greater than a common life. Girls who, like Jo, are fit for more than attaining the title of Mrs. rather than Miss. Her best friend since childhood is Theodore Lawrence, who is often called Laurie, but Jo affectionately refers to him as Teddy. In this excerpt, Laurie confesses his love to Jo, who cares more to be loved than love. Little Woman by Louisa May Alcott. No, Teddy, please, don't. I will, and you must hear me. It's no use, Jo. We've got to have it out. The sooner the better for both of us. Say what you like, then. I'll listen. Laurie was a young lover, but he was in earnest and meant to have it out if he died in the attempt. So he plunged into the subject with characteristic impetuosity, in a voice that would get choking on them, in spite of manful efforts to keep it steady. I've loved you ever since I've known you, Jo. I couldn't help it. You've been so good to me. I've tried to show it, but you wouldn't let me know. I'm going to make you hear and give me an answer, for I cannot go on like this any longer. I wanted to say to you this. I thought you'd understand. I know you did, but girls are so clear. You never know what they mean. They say no when they mean yes, and drive a man out of his wits just for the fun of it. I don't. I never wanted to make you care for me so, and I went away to keep you from it if I could. I thought so. It was like you, but it was no use. I only loved you all the more. And I worked hard to please you, and I gave up billiards and everything you didn't like, and waited and never complained because I figured you loved me, Jo. Oh, I'm not half good enough. And yes, you are. You're a great deal too good to me. And I'm so grateful to you and so proud and fond of you. I don't see why I can't love you as you want me to. I've tried, but I can't change the feeling, and it would be a lie to say I do when I don't. Really? Truly, Jo? Really, truly, dear. When the last words fell reluctantly from Jo's lips, Laurie turned as if to go on, but just laid his head down on the mossy fence post and stood so still that Jo was frightened. Oh, Teddy, I'm so sorry, so desperately sorry. I could kill myself if it would do any good. I wish you didn't take it so hard. I can't help it. You know it's impossible to make people love other people if they don't. They do sometimes. I don't believe it's the right sort of love, and I'd rather not try it. Then what will become of me? You'll love someone else like a sensible boy and forget all this trouble. I can't love anyone else, Jo. I'll never forget you. Never. Never. Laurie, I want to tell you something. Sit down and listen, for indeed I tend to do right and make you happy. Seeing a ray of hope, Laurie threw himself down on the grass at her feet and looked up at her with an expectant face. Now that arrangement was not conducted to calm speech or clear thought on Jo's part, for how could she say hard things to her boy while he watched her with eyes full of love and longing, and lashes still wet with the bitter drop or two her hardness of heart had run from him? I agree with Mother that you and I are not suited to each other because our quick tempers and strong will would probably make us very miserable if we were as foolish as to marry? No, we shouldn't. Jo, if you loved me, I should be a perfect saint, for you can make me anything you want. No, I can't. I've tried it and failed, and I won't risk our happiness by such a serious experiment. We don't agree and we never shall. So we'll be good friends all our lives, but we won't go into anything rash. Yes, we will if we get the chance. Now do be reasonable, take a sensible view of the case. I won't be reasonable. I don't want to take what you call a sensible view. It won't help me and it only makes you worry. I don't believe you've got any heart. I wish I hadn't. There was a little quiver in Joe's voice, and thinking it a good omen, Lori turned round and bringing all his persuasive powers to bear as he said, in the wheedlesome tone that had never been so dangerously wheedlesome before. Don't disappoint us, dear. Everyone expects it. Grandpa has his heart set upon it. Your people like it, and I can't get on without you. Say you will, and let's be happy. Not until months afterward did Joe understand how she had the strength of mind to hold fast the resolution she had made when she decided that she did not love her boy and never could. It was very hard to do, but she did it knowing that delay was both useless and foolish. I can't say yes truly, so I won't say it at all. You'll see that I'm right by and by, thanking me for it. I'll be hanged if I do! And Lori bounced up off the grass, burning with indignation at the bare idea. Yes, you will. You'll get over this after a while and find some lovely, accomplished girl who will adore you and make a fine mistress for your fine house. I shouldn't. I'm homely and awkward and odd and old, and you'd be ashamed of me, and we should quarrel. We can't help it even now, you see, and I shouldn't like elegant society, and you would, and you'd hate my scribbling, and I couldn't get on without it, and we should be unhappy and wish we hadn't done it, and everything would be horrid. Anything more? Nothing more except that I don't believe I shall ever marry. I'm happy as I am and love my liberty too well to be in any rush to give it up for a mortal man. I know better. You think so now, but there will come a time when you will care for somebody and you will live and die for him and love him tremendously. I know you will. It's your way. Stand by and see it. Yes, I will live and die for him if he ever comes and makes me love him in spite of myself. And you must do the best you can. I've done my best, but you won't be reasonable, and it's selfish to keep teasing for what I can't give. I shall always be fond of you, very fond indeed, as a friend. But I'll never marry you. And the sooner you believe it, the better, for both of us. So now. That speech was like fire to gunpowder. Lori looked at her a minute, as if he did not quite know what to do with himself, and turned sharply away. You'll be sorry someday, Joe. Oh, where are you going? To the devil! For a minute, Joe's heart stood still as he swung himself down the bank toward the river, but it takes much folly, sin, or misery to send a young man to a violent death. And Lori was not one of the weak sort who are conquered by a single failure. He had no thoughts of a melodramatic plunge, but some blind instincts led him to fling hat and coat into his boat and row away with all his might. She drew a long breath and unclasped her hands as she watched the poor fellow trying to outstrip the trouble he carried in his heart. She felt as if she had stabbed her dearest friend, and when he left her, without a look behind him, she knew that the boy, Lori, would never come again. Thank you.
Alexandra.
There are some moments which we can remember exactly what they were when they happened. For me, it's sitting in the dark, holding the candles and holding my family, listening to the roaring starting winds of Hurricane Sandy. In Zora Neale Hurston's Their Eyes Are Watching God, Jamie and T takes home in the swampy wastes of Florida the curse the wrath of non-committed one. Mom would come for me. He says hurricane warning out in Palm Beach. Not the bad there, but man, the smoke is too low and that big lake is loud to boast. Oh no, man. Some boys out there now talking about it. Some of them been in the glade 2 years. He nothing but a little blow. It was the whole day tomorrow trying to get back out here. Indians going to man. It's dangerous. They don't always know. Indians don't know much of nothing to tell the truth. Else they don't this country still. The white folks ain't gone nowhere. They don't know it's dangerous. Bed safe in there. Big jumping dance and that. Right here from this barrel. Vice hesitated and started to run out, but his uncle wasn't left. This time tomorrow, he's gonna wish his ball crow. He snorted and drove off. Vice went back to the baby. This time, if I ever see you no more, I'll see you in Africa. Others hurried east, like the Indians and rapids and snakes, but the majority sat around laughing and waiting for the sun to get coming again. Several men collected to Kate's house and sat around, sucking courage into each other's faces. Jamie baked a big can of blues and something she called sweet biscuits, and they all managed to be happy enough. Most of the great flamethrowers were all there, and naturally, it had been Big John the Conqueror and his works. How he had done everything big on earth and then went up to heaven without dying alone. Went up there picking guitar and all aimed to do the ring shout and round the throne. Then everybody but God and old Peter flew off in the flying race at Jericho and back, and John the Conqueror won the race. He went down the hill, beat the old devil, and had out ice water to everyone there. Somebody tried to say it was a mouth organ harp that John was playing, but the rest of them wouldn't hear that. Don't care how good anybody plays the harp. God would rather hear the guitar. That brought them back to tea cake. How come you couldn't hit that oscillator too? Go. All right now, make it snap. When that gets everybody, Muscle woke up and began to chant with the rhythm, and everybody bore down on the last word of the line. Yo, mama don't wear on drugs. I seen her when she took him off. She soaked him in alcohol. She sold it to Santa Claus. She told him it was against the law to wear them dirty drawers. Then McCoy went crazy and threw the feet and danced himself with everybody else crazy. When he finished, he sat back down on the floor and went to sleep again. Then they got to playing Florida Flip. Then it was like, not for money. This is a show afternoon. Everybody posing his fancy shots. As always, it boiled down to tea cake and motorboat. Tea cake with the shiny hair and motorboat with his face like a little black cherubim dressed in the church tower doing amazing things to anybody's likes. The others forgot to work and weather watching and throwing. It was hard. $1,000 Madison Square Garden couldn't have gotten any more buckets of suspense. It would have just been more people living in. After a while, somebody looked out and said, "Then again, I believe I'll get a routine check." Motorboat and tea cake were still playing, so everybody laughed at it. Sometime that night, the winds came back. Everything in the world had a strong rattle, sharp and short, like thieves do, vibrating from head to the edge of his fingers. By morning, Gabriel was playing a deep tone in the center of the drum. So when Jamie looked out at the door, she saw the drifting mist gathered in the west. That fire filled the sky. Armed themselves with thunders and marched forth against the world. Louder and higher and lower and wider, the sound and motion spread, mounting, sinking, darkening. It woke up old Jacoby, and the monster began to roll in his bed. Began to roll and complain like a purged world on grumble. The folks in the quarters and the people in the big houses further around the shore heard the big leak and wondered. The people felt uncomfortable but safe because there was a seawall stitching inside this monster in his bed. Folks let the people do the thinking. Castles felt themselves secure. This isn't worrying. Their decision was already made as always. She took their traps, shivering in the wet beds, and waited on the mercy of the Lord. The boss man might have had the thing stop before morning anyways. It was so easy to be hopeful in the daytime when you could see the things you wish on. But it was night. It saved night. Night was driving across nothingness, the whole round world in his hands. A big burst of thunder and lightning that trampled over the roof of the house. The tiki and motorboat stopped fighting. Motor looked up in his angel-looking way and said, "Big massive rocking chair is his." "I'm glad I stopped that crap shooting, even if it wasn't for London," Jane said. "Old Max is doing his work now." So I keep quiet. But held closer and stared at the door. They just didn't use any other part of their bodies, and they didn't look at anything but the door. Time has passed for asking white folks what to look for. 6 lives for questioning God. Through the screaming wind, they heard crashing and hurtling and dashing with unbelievable velocity. A baby rabbit, terror-ridden, squirmed to the hole in the floor and squatted off there in the shadows against the wall, seeming to know that nobody wanted to touch at such a time. And the lake got madder and madder with only its legs between them and him. In a windmill, TK touched Jamie and said, "I reckon you should say you're not big house facing such an astonishing." No. Yeah, no. People don't have to their time come, no kind of. Okay, wait a minute. I'm not husband in storm. That's all. Thank you, man, but supposing you sit down now. You wouldn't get mad at me for dragging Yankee? No. We've been together around 2 years. If you could see the light of day, you don't think you died, but so many people never see the light at all. I was holding that, and I opened the door. He dropped to the floor and put his head in her lap. "Reverend Jane, you names you don't say it. I never known you so satisfying me like that. I kind of thought the wind came back with triple fury." And put out the lights for one last time. They sat in the company with the others in other shanties, their eyes straining crude against the walls in their silk basket. He meant to measure their puny might against his. They seemed to be staring in the dark, but their eyes were watching God. They did.
Ready?
This is Lindsay.
We've all thought about the question, what would life be like if we went to other planets? How would we be different, and how will it affect us as a society? All Summer in a Day by Ray Bradbury. Ready? Ready, now, soon. Do the scientists really know? Will it happen today, will it? Look, see for yourself. The children pressed to each other like so many roses, so many weeds intermixed, peering out for a look at the hidden sun. It rained. It had been raining for 7 years. Thousands upon thousands of days compounded and filled with rain. From one end to another, the drum and the gush of water. And this was the way life was on the planet Venus. This was the schoolroom of the children, of the rocket men and women who had come to a raining world to set up civilization and live out their lives here. It's stopping, yes! Margot stood apart from the rest of the children. From the children who could never even remember a time when there wasn't rain and rain. They were all 9 years old, and if there had been a day 7 years ago when the sun came out for 1 hour and showed its face to the world, they could not recall. Sometimes at night, she heard them stir in remembrance. And she knew they were dreaming and remembering a gold or yellow crayon or a coin large enough to buy the world with. She knew they thought they remembered the warmness, like a blushing in the face, the body, the arms and legs, and trembling hands. But then they always awoke to the tatting drum, the endless shaking down of the clear bead necklace upon the roof, the walk, the gardens, the forest. Their dreams were gone. All day yesterday, they had read in class about the sun, about how like a lemon it was and how hot, and they had written small stories or essays and poems about it. I think the sun is a flower that blooms for just 1 hour. That was Margot's poem, read in a small, quiet voice in the classroom while the rain was falling outside. You didn't write that, protested one of the boys. I did. William, said the teacher. But that was yesterday. Now the rain was slackening, and the children were crushed in the great thick windows. Where's teacher? She'll be back. She better hurry, we'll miss it. They turned on themselves, all stumbling folks. Margot stood alone. She was a very frail girl who looked as if the rain had washed out the blue from her eyes, the red from her mouth, and the yellow from her hair. She was an old dusted photograph from an album whitened away, and if she spoke at all, her voice would be a ghost. Now she stood separate, staring out at the rain in a loud, wet world beyond the huge glass. What are you looking at? Said William. Margot said nothing. Speak when you're spoken to. He gave her a shove, but she did not move. Rather, she let herself be moved by his words and nothing else. They edged away from her. He would not look at her. She felt them go away. And this was because she would play no games with them in the echoing tunnels of the underground city. If they tagged her and ran, she stood blinking, did not follow. When the class sang songs about happiness and life, her lips barely moved. Only when they sang about the sun and the summer did her lips move, as she watched through drenched windows. And then, of course, the biggest crime of all was that she had come here only 5 years ago from Earth. And she remembered the way the sun was in the sky. She was only 4 in Ohio. And they had been here all of their lives. And they had only been 2 years old when the last sun came out, and had long since forgotten the color and the heat of it, and the way it really was. But Margot remembered. It's like a penny. No, it's not. It's like a fire in the stove. You're lying. You don't remember. But she remembered, and stood quietly apart from all of them and watched the pattering windows. And once, a month ago, she had refused to shower in the school shower rooms, had clutched her hands to her ears overhead, screaming the water mustn't touch her head, so that after, dimly she sensed it. She was different, and they knew her difference and kept away. There was talk that her father and mother were taking her back to Earth next year. It seemed vital to her that they do so, though it would mean the loss of thousands of dollars to their family. And so the children hated her for all of these reasons, both of little and big consequence. They hated her pale snow face, her waiting silence, her thinness, and her possible future. Get away! What are you waiting for? Then for the first time she turned and looked at him. And what was waiting was in her eyes. Well, don't wait around here. You won't see nothing. Her lips moved. Nothing, he cried. It was all a joke, wasn't it? He turned to the other children. Nothing's happening today, is it? They all blinked at him, and then understanding, laughed and shook their heads. Nothing. Oh, but this is the day the scientists predict. They know the sun. All a joke. Hey, everyone, let's put her in the closet before teacher comes. No. They surged about her, caught her up and bore her, protesting, then pleading, then crying back into a tunnel room, a closet where they slammed and locked the door. They stood looking at the door and saw it tremble from her beating and throwing herself against it. They heard her muffled cries, and smiling, they turned and went out the back down the tunnel, just when the teacher arrived. Ready, children? Yes! Are we all here? Yes! The rain still slacked more. It crowded the huge door. The rain stopped. The world ground to a standstill. The silence was so immense that you felt you had lost your hearing altogether. The children put their hands to their ears. They stood apart. The door slid back, and the smell of a silent, waiting world came to them. The sun came out. It was the color of flaming bronze, and it was very large. And the sky around them was a blazing blue tile color. And the children burned with the sunlight, released from their spells, rushed out, yelling into the springtime. "Then don't go too far," called the teacher after them. "You've only got 2 hours, you wouldn't want to get caught out." But they were running and turning their heads to the sky and feeling the sun on their cheeks like a warm iron. They were taking off their jackets, letting the sun burn their arms. Oh, it's better than the sun lamps. Much, much better. They ran among the trees. They slipped and fell, pushed each other. They played hide and seek and tag. But most of all, they squinted into the sun until tears ran down their faces. They put their hands up to that yellowness and that amazing blueness. They looked at everything and savored everything. Then, wildly, like animals escaped from the caves, they ran and ran in shouting circles. They ran for an hour and did not stop running. And then, in the midst of the running, one of the girls wailed. Everyone stopped. The girl, standing in the open, held out her hand. "Oh, look, look." They came slowly to her and opened up her palm. In the center of it cupped a huge and single raindrop. She began to cry. Looking at it, they glanced quietly at the sky. A few cold drops fell on their noses, their cheeks, their mouths. The sun faded behind a stir of mist. A cool wind blew cold around them. They turned and started to walk back towards the underground house, their hands at their sides, their smiles vanishing away. A boom of thunder startled them. Lightning struck 10 miles away, 5 miles away, a mile, a half a mile. The sky darkened into midnight with a flash. They stood in the doorway of the underground for a moment until it was raining so hard. Then they closed the door and heard the gigantic sound of the rain falling in tons and avalanches everywhere and forever. Will it be 7 more years? Yes, 7. And one of them gave a little cry. "Margot!" "What?" "She's still in the closet where we locked her! Margot!" They stood as if someone had driven them, like so many stakes, into the floor. They looked at each other and looked away. They glanced out at the world that was raining now, and raining and raining. So steadily, they could not meet each other's glances. Their faces were solemn and pale. They looked down at their hands, their feet, their faces down. "Margot." One of the girls said, "Well?" No one moved. "Go on." They walked slowly down the hall into the sound of the cold rain. They turned through the doorway, and the sound of the storm and thunder, lightning on their faces, blue and terrible. They walked over to the closet door and slowly opened it. Behind the closet door was only silence. They unlocked the door even more slowly and let Margot out.
Okay. Next is Adam.
In times of struggle, our nation has historically pulled together and shared the burdens and sorrow. The Human Comedy by William Saroyan focuses on a family in California during World War II. The oldest son is off fighting in Europe, and the youngest son is home and he got a job delivering telegrams, some of which contain harrowing news. The Human Comedy. by William Soroy. The messenger got off his bicycle in front of the house of Mrs. Rosa Sandoval. He went to the door and knocked gently. He knew almost immediately that someone was inside the house. He could not hear anything, but he was sure the knock was bringing someone to the door, and he was most eager to see who this person would be, this woman named Rosa Sandoval. The door was not a long time opening, but there was no hurry in the way it moved on its hinges. The movement of the door was as if, whoever she was, she had nothing in the world to fear. Then the door was open, and there she was. To Homer, the Mexican woman was beautiful. He could see that she had been patient all her life, so that now, after years of it, her lips were set in a gentle smile. But like all people who never receive telegrams, the appearance of a messenger at the front door is full of terrible implications. Homer knew that Mrs. Rosa Sandoval was shocked to see him. Her first word was the word of all surprise. Oh, as if instead of a messenger, she had thought of opening the door to someone she had known a long time and would be pleased to sit down with. She studied Homer's eyes and knew that the message was not a welcome one. It wasn't Homer's fault. His work was to deliver telegrams. Even so, he felt